Your daughter's wedding invitations are ready. I froze, staring at the email that wasn't meant for me. Wedding? What wedding? My daughter hadn't mentioned any wedding. I clicked open the message from the print shop, my heart pounding. Mr. Taylor, your wedding invitation proofs are attached for final approval. Please confirm by 3 p.m. today for rush delivery. I frowned. The email wasn't meant for me. I was about to delete it when curiosity made me open the attachment. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor of my home studio as I stared at the image on my screen. Catherine Elizabeth Grant and Benjamin James Miller request your presence. My daughter's wedding. My 24-year-old daughter was getting married, and I was reading about it by accident. The invitation was ornate, with musical notes subtly woven into the border design, a nod to our family's musical heritage. Catherine had inherited my ear for melody, my passion for harmony. But there was no mention of me. The invitation listed only Mr. and Mrs. Robert Daniels request your presence at the marriage of their daughter. Robert Daniels, my ex-wife's husband of 8 years. The man who was apparently giving away my daughter. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and took a screenshot of the invitation. Then, with deliberate calm that masked the storm inside me, I replied to the email. Thank you for the proof. There appears to be a mistake. Please hold until I contact you directly. My finger hovered over Catherine's contact information. We hadn't spoken in months, my fault as much as hers, with my touring schedule and her medical residency. But this felt impossible. I dialed her number, but after 4 rings, it went to voicemail. Catherine, it's Dad. We need to talk. It's important. Call me back. My voice sounded hollow, even to me. I tried my son next. Dad? What's up? Jason's voice was guarded, cautious in a way that suddenly made terrible sense. When were you going to tell me about your sister's wedding? The silence that followed was deafening. How did he started? So you knew. I cut him off, my voice dropping dangerously low. You knew she was getting married, and you didn't tell me. That Robert is walking her down the aisle. Dad, it's complicated, Jason sighed. Mom thought. I don't give a damn what your mother thought. I slammed my hand against the desk, sending papers flying. Catherine is my daughter. Look, can we talk about this in person? I'm at the studio finishing up. I can be at your place in an hour. I hung up without answering and sat motionless, staring at the wedding invitation still displayed on my screen. November 12th. Just 6 weeks away. My little girl had been planning her wedding, and I'd been deliberately kept in the dark. My phone lit up with a text from my ex-wife, Diane. Of course, Jason had called her immediately. Thomas, let's be adults about this. Catherine made her choice. I felt something snap inside me. 24 years of fatherhood, of birthday parties and school recitals, of teaching Catherine to play piano and guitar, of bandaging scraped knees and checking for monsters under the bed. 24 years reduced to Catherine made her choice. Instead of responding to Diane, I picked up my keys and walked out to my car. The Nashville afternoon was bright and merciless as I drove toward the address listed on the print shop's email signature. I needed to see the physical invitations to confirm this wasn't some elaborate mistake or cruel joke. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as I entered Precision Printing. A young woman with purple-streaked hair smiled from behind the counter. How can I help you today? I'm Thomas Grant, I said, watching her expression carefully. I believe you have a wedding invitation order for me to review. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh, Mr. Grant, we weren't expecting you in person. Let me check on that order. She disappeared into the back room, returning moments later with a middle-aged man who introduced himself as the owner. Mr. Grant, there seems to be some confusion. The wedding invitation order was placed by a Mrs. Daniels. That would be my ex-wife, I said smoothly, forcing a smile. I'm the father of the bride. There was a miscommunication about my involvement. May I see the invitations, please? The owner hesitated, then nodded to his employee. Jessica, can you pull the Miller Grant proofs? While they retrieved the order, I casually leaned against the counter, trying to appear calmer than I felt. The chaos in my mind was organizing itself into a plan. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to make threats. I was going to gather information, and then I was going to fix this. Jessica returned with a large envelope and carefully removed a sample invitation. It was even more beautiful in person, cream-colored paper with gold foil details, those subtle musical notes dancing around the border. And there it was in elegant print. Catherine Elizabeth Grant and Benjamin James Miller, with my ex-wife and her husband listed as the parents of the bride. These are lovely, I managed to say. When is the full order scheduled to be completed? The final invitations are being printed now, Mr. Grant. They'll be ready for pickup tomorrow afternoon. I nodded, taking another long look at the invitation. And the RSVP cards? May I see those as well? Jessica slid another card from the envelope. The RSVP was addressed to my ex-wife's home, with a deadline of October 15th. Is there anything you'd like to change, sir? The owner asked cautiously. I handed the cards back with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. No changes needed. I simply wanted to see them in person. Thank you for your time. Back in my car, I finally allowed the rage to surface. I pounded the steering wheel until my palms stung, cursing Diane and Robert and even Catherine. How could she do this? How could she erase me so completely? My phone buzzed with another text from Diane. Don't make this about you, Thomas. For once, think about what Catherine wants. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat without replying and drove toward my son's recording studio. Jason had always been the mediator, the peacekeeper between Catherine and me when tensions arose. He would have answers. As I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted him waiting outside, pacing nervously. At 26, he looked so much like me at that age, tall and lean with the same unruly dark hair that was now streaked with gray at my temples. Dad, he began as I approached, hands raised placatingly. Let me explain before you. How long? I demanded, my voice tight. How long has this wedding been in the works? Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. They got engaged at Christmas. The wedding planning started about 6 months ago. 6 months. I repeated incredulously. 6 fucking months, and no one thought to mention it to me? Not even you. I wanted to tell you, Jason protested. But Catherine made me promise not to. She said she'd tell you herself when she was ready. And when exactly was she planning to do that? The day of? Or maybe she'd just send me a postcard from the honeymoon. Dad, please. It's not what you think. Jason gestured toward the studio entrance. Can we at least talk inside? I followed him into the small recording studio he built with his savings and a loan from me 3 years ago. The sound booth where I'd recorded vocals for my last album stood silent and accusatory. Talk, I said, dropping heavily into a chair. Jason paced the length of the mixing board before turning to face me. Catherine didn't tell you because she was afraid you'd make a scene. Like you always do. The words hit like a physical blow. What are you talking about? When have I ever? Her graduation? That time she brought Ben home to meet you? Her 21st birthday? I winced at the memories. Those were different circumstances. Were they? Jason challenged. Every important moment in her life, you find a way to make it about you and your feelings. About how you deserved more recognition or respect or attention. That's not fair, I protested, but the defense sounded hollow even to my own ears. Isn't it? Catherine wanted a drama-free wedding. Mom and Robert offered to pay for everything and handle the arrangements. So they bought the right to pretend they're her only parents? I stood up, anger surging again. And that justifies completely excluding me? Not even a courtesy invitation? Jason looked away. The plan was to tell you a couple of weeks before. Catherine was going to ask you to attend as a guest. A guest? I repeated numbly. At my own daughter's wedding. Yes, a guest. Not the father who gives her away. Not the man who makes a speech or has the father-daughter dance. Just someone who sits quietly and doesn't cause problems. Each word was a dagger. I collapsed back into the chair, the fight suddenly draining out of me. She really thinks that little of me? Jason's expression softened. She loves you, Dad. But you haven't exactly been reliable. The missed birthdays, the forgotten promises, showing up late to her med school graduation. I was on tour, I said weakly. The label had commitments. There's always a reason, Jason interrupted. Always something more important than being there for her. We sat in silence for a long moment, the truth of his words settling heavily between us. I need to talk to her, I finally said. Not to fight, not to make demands, just to talk. Jason hesitated. She's working a 36-hour shift at the hospital. She won't be done until tomorrow evening. I nodded, standing up. Then I'll wait. Text me when she's available. As I turned to leave, Jason called after me. Dad, what are you going to do? I paused at the door. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I promise I won't embarrass her. The drive home was a blur. Inside my empty house, I wandered from room to room like a ghost, finally ending up in my study where framed gold and platinum records lined the walls alongside family photos from happier times. I picked up a picture of Catherine at 16, sitting at the piano in this very room, her fingers poised over the keys, her face turned toward me behind the camera with a smile that could light up the darkest night. I had taught her to play when her hands were barely big enough to span an octave. Another photo showed us backstage at the Grand Ole Opry, Catherine beaming with pride as I held up my Songwriter of the Year award. "This one's because of you, Kitty," I had told her that night. The song that won, Daughter's Lullaby, had been inspired by the melodies I used to hum to her as a baby. How had we gone from those moments to this, to being so estranged that she would cut me out of the most important day of her life? I set the photo down and opened my laptop. The invitation was still there on my screen, mocking me. Without thinking, I pulled up a new document and began to type. Not angry words or accusations, but memories. Every significant moment I could recall from Catherine's life. The day she was born, her first steps, the time she fell off her bike and needed stitches, the school concerts where she outshone everyone, teaching her to drive in the empty stadium parking lot. I wrote through the night, pausing only to refill my coffee cup, the words pouring out like a flood breaking through a dam. By dawn, I had 40 pages of memories, some joyful, some painful, all real. I read through them, seeing patterns emerge that I hadn't noticed before. How often I had promised to be there and failed. How many times I had put my career first. How I had expected her to arrange her life around my unpredictable schedule. But also how deeply I loved her. How proud I was of the woman she had become, brilliant, compassionate, determined. A doctor who saved lives. A musician who played for her patients because she understood the healing power of melody. I saved the document, then reached for my phone. No messages from Jason or Catherine. It was still early, not quite 7 a.m. I sent a text to Diane. "We need to meet. Not to fight. Important. Please." Her reply came surprisingly quickly. Cafe Margot. 9 a.m. I showered and changed, then drove to the small coffee shop where Diane and I used to meet for breakfast in the early years of our marriage, before fame and touring and resentment pulled us apart. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a mug. At 50, she was still beautiful, her blonde hair now expertly highlighted to disguise the gray, her face showing only the faintest lines around her eyes and mouth. "Thomas," she said as I sat down across from her. Her voice was neutral, neither warm nor cold. "Diane," I nodded. "Thank you for meeting me." A server appeared and I ordered black coffee, waiting until we were alone again before speaking. "I want to understand what happened," I said quietly. "Not to blame anyone, just to understand how we got here." Diane studied me for a long moment. "You really don't see it, do you?" "See what?" "Catherine tried to include you. Repeatedly. She called you when Ben proposed, left you 3 voicemails about it. You were in the middle of that Vegas residency and didn't call back for 2 weeks." I frowned, trying to remember. December had been a blur of performances and industry parties. "I don't recall, of course you don't," Diane said, not unkindly. "That's the problem, Thomas. You've been an inconsistent presence in her life since the divorce. Robert has been there every day for the past 8 years, helping with college applications, moving her into dorms, listening to her practice medical terminology, picking her up when her car broke down in the middle of the night. I would have done those things if she'd asked," I protested. "Would you? Could you? Or would you have been in LA or New York or London, sending your regrets and an expensive gift instead?" The coffee arrived and I took a long sip, using the moment to gather my thoughts. I'm not arguing that I've been the perfect father, but to exclude me entirely from her wedding. "That wasn't the original plan," Diane sighed. "Catherine wanted you to walk her down the aisle alongside Robert. A shared honor. She told you this when you had dinner together in March." I stared at her blankly. "The dinner at Morton's? After your symphony performance?" A vague memory surfaced, Catherine in a blue dress, her voice excited as she talked about hospital rotations and her boyfriend's promotion and, yes, something about wedding plans. I had been distracted, worried about a contract dispute with my publisher. "She mentioned the wedding," I said slowly, "but not specifics about my role." "She absolutely did, Thomas. She said you seemed distracted but had agreed it was a good solution." She was so relieved. My stomach clenched with dread. "And then what happened?" Diane's expression hardened. "Then came her birthday in May. You promised to fly in for dinner. She waited for 3 hours at the restaurant before Jason finally reached you. You were at some industry party in Miami and had completely forgotten. The memory hit me like a truck. I had missed Catherine's birthday because a major label head had invited me to his yacht, and my agent had insisted it was too important an opportunity to pass up. She was devastated. Diane continued. Not just disappointed, devastated. She said it was the final straw. That she couldn't trust you with her wedding day because you'd proven over and over that your career would always come first. So she decided to cut me out completely? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No. She decided to have Robert walk her down the aisle alone, but you would still be invited as her father. The invitations were always going to be from us as the parents who raised her. Diane paused, but she was going to call you this weekend to explain everything and formally invite you. That was the plan until you somehow found out and started causing exactly the kind of drama she was afraid of. I sat back, stunned. I wasn't trying to cause drama. I was shocked. And your first instinct was to confront, demand, and accuse. Diane shook her head. Just like always. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 20 years of patterns and mistakes pressing down on me. I wrote something last night, I finally said. Memories of Catherine. Of being her father. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. I'd like you to read it, if you would. Diane looked surprised, but took the phone. I watched her expression change as she scrolled through the document, softening, then growing sad, then thoughtful. This is different for you, she said eventually, handing the phone back. More self-aware than I expected. I had a lot of time to think last night, I replied. About what kind of father I've been. About what kind of father I want to be going forward. That's good, Thomas. But it doesn't change the past. No, I agreed. But maybe it could change the future. I took a deep breath. I don't want to disrupt Catherine's wedding plans. If she wants Robert to walk her down the aisle, I accept that. He's earned that right. But I would like to be there, in whatever capacity she's comfortable with. Diane studied me, skepticism clear in her eyes. And if that means sitting quietly in the back with the distant relatives? No special recognition. Then that's what I'll do, I said firmly. This isn't about me. It's about Catherine. A faint smile touched Diane's lips. Well, that would be a first. I deserve that, I admitted. But people can change, Diane. Even self-centered old rock stars. She laughed softly, and for a moment I glimpsed the woman I had fallen in love with 30 years ago. I'll talk to Catherine, she promised. But Thomas? You need to give her space. No more confrontations, no more demands. Let her process this her way. I nodded. I understand. Thank you. As we parted outside the cafe, Diane hesitated, then said, That thing you wrote. The memories. You should give that to Catherine. Not as a guilt trip, but as a gift. She might appreciate knowing you remember those moments too. 3 days passed with no word from Catherine. I kept busy in my home studio, working on arrangements for a film score I'd been commissioned to write, deliberately keeping my phone nearby but resisting the urge to check it every 5 minutes. On the 4th day, as I was struggling with a particularly troublesome bridge section, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I considered ignoring it, but something pulled me to the door. Catherine stood on my porch, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, still wearing scrubs from the hospital. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes, but her posture was straight, determined. Catherine, I breathed, frozen in the doorway. Hi, Dad, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Can I come in? I stepped back immediately. Of course, yes. Come in. She walked past me into the living room but remained standing, declining my gesture toward the couch. Mom told me what happened. She began without preamble. About how you found out about the wedding and what you two discussed. I nodded, restraining my impulse to launch into explanations or defenses. This was her moment to speak. I was going to call you this weekend, she continued. I had it all planned out what to say, how to explain everything. I believe you, I said quietly. She looked surprised at that, as if she'd expected an argument. You hurt me, Dad. Repeatedly. Not intentionally, I know that. But the result is the same. I couldn't trust you with my wedding day because you've shown me over and over that I'm not a priority. Each word was a knife, but I forced myself to stand there and take it. Because she was right. I understand, I said, my voice rough with emotion. And I'm sorry, Catherine. Truly sorry. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Jason said you promised not to make a scene. That you seemed different this time. I'm trying to be, I admitted. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the kind of father I've been, the kind of father I want to be. Catherine crossed her arms, skepticism clear on her face. And what did you conclude? That I've failed you too many times. That I've put my career ahead of the most important relationship in my life. That I've been selfish and inconsiderate and neglectful. The words tumbled out, painful but necessary. And that I want to do better, be better, if you'll let me. She was silent for a long moment, studying me as if searching for signs of insincerity. Mom also mentioned you wrote something, she finally said. She was impressed by it. I nodded, moving slowly to pick up my laptop from the coffee table. I wrote down every significant memory I have of you, of us, the good and the bad. Would you like to read it? Catherine hesitated, then nodded once. I handed her the laptop and watched as she sat down on the edge of the couch and began to read. Minutes stretched into an hour as she scrolled through the document, occasionally wiping at her eyes, sometimes smiling faintly. When she finally looked up, her expression was softer. You remember all of this? Of course I do, I said gently. You're my daughter, Catherine, my kitty. Just because I've been a self-absorbed jerk doesn't mean I don't cherish every moment with you. A tear slipped down her cheek. There are things in here I didn't think you even noticed. Like how scared I was before my first piano recital, or the time I crashed your songwriting session because I had a melody idea. I noticed everything, I said, finally daring to sit beside her. I just didn't always show it. And I didn't always make the right choices about how to spend my time. Catherine closed the laptop and turned to face me directly. I need to know something, Dad. If I invite you to my wedding, can you just be there for me? Not making it about you, not causing drama, not competing with Robert or resenting the role he's played in my life. Yes, I said without hesitation. I already told your mother. I accept whatever role you want me to have. If that means Robert walks you down the aisle alone, I understand. He's earned that honor. If that means I sit quietly with the distant cousins, I'll do it gladly. I just want to be there to see my daughter on her wedding day. Catherine watched me closely, then nodded once. Decision made. I want you both to walk me down the aisle. That was always the plan, until I convinced myself you didn't care enough to be reliable. Relief and gratitude flooded through me. I would be honored, I said, my voice thick. And Catherine, I promise I won't let you down this time. Don't make promises, Dad, she said, not unkindly. Just show up. Be present. That's all I've ever wanted from you. I nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. I'll be there. Clear calendar, no distractions, focused entirely on celebrating you and Ben. A small smile finally appeared on her face. Good. She stood up, gathering her things. I have to get back to the hospital for evening rounds, but I'm glad we talked. Me too, I said, standing as well but keeping a respectful distance. More than I can say. At the door, she paused and turned back. You know, you'll need to coordinate with Robert for the aisle walk. Think you can handle that? It was a test, a small one, but significant. Absolutely, I said with a smile. I'll reach out to him tomorrow, if that's okay. She nodded, seeming satisfied. Then, to my surprise, she stepped forward and gave me a brief hug. I've missed you, Dad. I've missed you too, Kitty, I whispered, fighting back tears. So much. After she left, I stood at the window watching her car pull away, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had been given a second chance, and I was determined not to waste it. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. True to my word, I reached out to Robert the very next day. Our conversation was initially awkward but ultimately productive. He was understandably protective of Catherine, but willing to share the honor of walking her down the aisle. She loves you, he told me bluntly. She always has, even when you've hurt her. Don't make her regret giving you this chance. I won't, I promised. And I meant it. I cleared my schedule completely for the week of the wedding, turning down a prestigious award show appearance that conflicted with the rehearsal dinner. My agent was livid, but for the first time in my career, I didn't care. Some things were more important than industry connections. As the wedding day approached, I found myself growing closer to Catherine through our shared preparations. She asked me to help arrange the music for the ceremony, a task I threw myself into with passion and precision. We spent evenings at the piano in my studio, working through arrangements of her favorite classical pieces interwoven with subtle nods to the lullabies and songs I had written for her throughout her life. The day before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, I watched Catherine move among her guests, radiant, confident, kind. She caught my eye across the room and smiled, a genuine, warm smile that held no reservations. In that moment, I knew that whatever happened tomorrow, we had already begun to heal something precious that I had nearly destroyed through years of neglect. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. I arrived at the church early, dressed in the charcoal gray suit Catherine had selected to complement Robert's navy one. We would flank her, one on each side, unified in our love for the remarkable woman we had both helped raise, albeit in different ways. As I waited in the antechamber, a wave of emotion threatened to overwhelm me. Not jealousy or resentment as I might have felt before, but gratitude, pure, humble gratitude for the privilege of being part of this day, for the second chance I had been given. The door opened and Catherine entered in her wedding gown, breathtaking in ivory lace with subtle musical notes embroidered along the hem, another nod to our shared passion. Her eyes found mine, and I saw in them not just the beautiful bride she was today, but echoes of the toddler who had climbed into my lap at the piano, the teenager who had played her first original composition for me, the young woman who had trusted me with her dreams and disappointments. "Ready, Dad?" she asked softly. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. "Ready, Kitty." Robert entered then, and after a moment of adjustment, we took our positions on either side of her. As the music began, the arrangement we had created together, we walked forward in perfect harmony, each supporting the woman we loved in our own way. At the altar, when the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Robert and I answered in unison, "We do." Then we each kissed her cheek and stepped back, allowing her to move forward into her future while carrying the best parts of her past. During the reception, I kept my promise to focus solely on celebrating Catherine and Ben. I declined the DJ's invitation to perform, suggesting instead that the band play the song I had written for her birth as a background to their first dance. It was the right decision, making the moment about their love, not my talent. Later, as the evening wound down, Catherine found me at my table, slipping into the empty seat beside me with a contented sigh. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" I asked. "For being exactly who I needed today. Not Thomas Grant the musician, but Thomas Grant my dad." I reached out to squeeze her hand gently. "It was my honor, Catherine. Truly." She studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You know, Dad, Ben and I are talking about starting a family in a couple of years. If we have a child, I'd want you to be a part of their life. A real part. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays. I'd like that very much," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "I'd be a better grandfather than I was a father." "Well," she said, standing as Ben approached to claim her for another dance, "you'll have the chance to prove it." As I watched my daughter return to the dance floor, wrapped in the arms of the man she loved, surrounded by friends and family who adored her, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. I had nearly lost everything that truly mattered, but through Catherine's grace and my own belated awakening, I had been granted redemption. The music swelled, a song I had written decades ago, now played for my daughter's wedding. I closed my eyes and simply listened, grateful for second chances, for the opportunity to rewrite the melody of our relationship into something harmonious and enduring. Was I right to step back and share Catherine's day? Or should I have fought harder for my traditional father's role? Would you have been able to make peace with her decision?